Okay, welcome to the show, everyone. I'm joined today by David Shepherd, who is the country manager for ANZ for HubSpot. David's been on the show before, and we've got him back again. We're going to talk a lot about sales process and sales structure today. So, David, look forward to our discussion. Welcome again.
Thanks, Steve. Pleasure being here again.
Yeah, great to have you back. So, David, in our previous discussion, we talked about your sort of long career and the progression within HubSpot, and you were one of the top salespeople there. You're consistently number two, the salesperson and sales manager, which is still a really awesome achievement in a company like that. So, what are some of the things that made you a successful salesperson in that sort of early SaaS world?
I wish I had something more profound than this, but I think I was the hardest worker. I was young. I was 25 or so. I remember getting to HubSpot and being like, this will be great. I'll learn a little bit more about sales. At that point, I hadn't sold a ton in like a B2B scenario. I'd done mostly B2C before that, selling insurance products. And I was just like, I'll round out my sales skills and then I'll go start my own company.
So you mean pure hard work, pure like activity, or did you work hard at learning as well, or you were pretty raw and just like threw hours at the job? Or
both. Okay. So like I remember the VP of marketing, a woman named Jean Hopkins, just awesome at her job. But we used to kind of like compete who could get to the office first. You know, it might be some mornings might be 6 or 6:30, 7 in the morning. But I mean, that wasn't every day, but you know, it'd be like who could turn the lights on first type thing.
Yes.
And then I'd
shut it competitive.
I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I got sales coaches too, right? Like I had my manager who was great. I went and talked to our head of L&D at the time, learning and development, who had been a sales guy in the past and been a sales manager in the past, and he was super helpful. So I did everything I possibly could to get better. I listened to other people on phone calls. I did a lot of team selling in the early days. I just did everything I possibly could, but it was mostly through effort. At least for the first 9 months.
Yes.
And then I think where I really built my brand at HubSpot is that as a SaaS company, it's much better to have one customer that sticks around for 10 years than it is to have 10 customers that stick around for 1 year.
Okay.
As a sales rep, you'd rather have the 10 customers for 1 year because you get paid on that. But I actually made my brand off of having customers that stuck around for a really long time.
So at the time, you managed the whole life cycle. You were
everything.
Prospecting and then getting them on board and then renewing them as well, right?
We didn't have to do the renewal, but we were responsible from kind of, cradle to grave net new business. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So how is the environment different than to today, at the sales rep level and the sales process there?
Yeah. I'll skip a little bit of the like HubSpot centric stuff because like back then we sold one product, now we're selling a bunch of products.
Yep.
So there's some real differences there. But in terms of like what I see out in the market, I think that consumers are, whether it's, a consumer like a B2C thing or even in a B2B sense, people are a lot more skeptical. People demand perfect service. And so for a sales rep to think of yourself as an extension of the service team might be a little bit hard to stomach, but you are like, you're the face of your company and people demand the best. And so, I get emails all the time, whether it's on LinkedIn or into my inbox, of sales reps that are clearly copying and pasting. And sometimes they've done zero research whatsoever.
Oh, you mean people are inbounding to you, approaching you to sell?
Approaching me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I feel like I could like take those emails and do a webinar on like what not to do.
Exactly.
And it's
We'll get them. Yeah.
It's rare that I get someone who does it right. I think personalization is everything these days. If you're not doing research about who you're reaching out to, and you don't actually understand their world on some level, you got no chance. If you're sending the same message to 10 people, to 50 people, to 100 people, you got no chance. And I think a long time ago, 10 years ago when I was selling, you could do a lot of that and add in some like kind of cool things like, oh, here's a blog post that might be interesting to you. But for the most part, the rest of the email was basically exactly the same for everyone. Yep. You could get away with that because back then. So what I was saying there, I'm not sure what we missed exactly, but just 10 years ago, you could add a little bit of value, like, hey, here's a cool blog post, and that would have set you apart from everybody else out there. You can't do that now. It has to be much more personalized.
Yes.
You actually have to do some research on the company you're talking to and that individual, and it really comes down to personalization. And then I think you got to do some things. You can't rely on just the same channels. I don't believe cold calling is dead. I think that's a bit ridiculous because that sets sales reps up to not be successful because you have to reach out to people. I think email is still a good avenue too, but I think you have to be using social media like LinkedIn. I think you have to be recording videos, not that much different than what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And sending those off. Like Vidyard is a great company. Loom is a great company to do that sort of stuff. There's one here in Australia called Bonjoro, Bonjoro, that is great too.
Yeah, I've used Vidyard. It's what a great tool to differentiate yourself. To send a personalized video to a prospect that's got their name on it, and there's a personal message. Like well, for now, it's probably going to cut through. In a year or two, it'll be standard, and we'll be on to what are you going to do? A 3D sort of.
Maybe we'll have to go back. I don't think we're going to go back to like meeting people in person, like just walking to an office. I think people get really creeped out about that. We get that here in Sydney every now and then. And the folks at the front desk are just always like, there's some weirdo at the front desk. And they're not being weird. They're just trying to be personal, but
yes,
it doesn't go over very well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So a lot there. So definitely like personalization. And I guess it's a lot about how we're selling rather than what we sell. We probably used to lead with, okay, this is what we sell. Here's some information. Yeah, here's a link to something that might be relevant. But now it's really going to be the sales. I don't know what you think, but the salesperson can really make a difference here. The salesperson probably could have been more machine-like in the past. Take the marketing message and take that out to customers. That worked okay. But now we've got to take the marketing input, take the product input, and then personalize, do our research and personalize to each customer. So it's a very different skill set.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it now in the last, let's call it year or two, is changing around making it easy for your customers to buy.
Yeah.
How do you tailor your process not only to show them the parts of your product that fit their problems, which is hard always, whether it was 100 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yep.
And I think in the last 10 years that the need for that has really gone up a bunch. But now what I'm seeing is that you still have to do that, and that bar is getting raised up, but you also now have to tailor your process to how that person wants to buy.
Okay.
And the best sales reps are able to influence certain deals, but also be really patient with other deals. And so, I don't remember where I stole this from, but, being patient with customers and impatient with pipeline is more important than ever, because if you push too hard and or you change up, let's say you're the greatest consultant, the greatest sales consultant in the world, and then you come to the end of the quarter and you're pushing really hard all of a sudden, it's almost like you're Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde there. You ruin everything.
Right. So if a sales rep's doing that, do you view that as, hey, they're doing that because their pipeline's actually weak and they should have more pipe. And it's sort of their own fault that they've got themselves in that corner, right?
I think it's really easy for you, Steve, and for me as leaders and consultants and strategists to say that. And I think it's true. But I think that when you're that sales rep and you're in that position, I really, I feel for them, right?
Yes.
I think it's a really tough place to be. I think being a sales rep today is harder than it's ever been. I think half of the solution is building more pipeline. People hate to hear it, but I told you, like, the reason I was successful is because I was the hardest worker. I still believe that. But I think you need more skills than you've ever needed before to help understand how people are buying and how to help them make decisions quickly. Because oftentimes the only difference between a fast sale and a slow sale is the level of comfort on the prospect side and how much time between each of the steps in the sales process.
Yeah. No, I think you make some good points there. Like we're asking a lot of the salesperson now, right? Like we mentioned before, maybe in the past, just take the product, get the message out, take prospects through the funnel, right? And customers expect, now we're saying, okay, you've got to craft your message. You've got to customize to this specific customer to get their attention. Then we don't want you pushing them. We want you to consult with them, help them understand their business problem, and keep in the back of your mind that the problem you're solving has got to relate to your solution, right? Down the track without showing that you're talking about your solution. And then you've got to help them with their buying process because customers don't buy CRMs every day. You should be able to consult to them on how they can buy and who they have to align in their own organization and how to get the budget approved. Like, it's quite a laundry list of expectations on a sales rep today when you think about it.
And oh by the way, don't miss your quota. Yeah. And oh by the way, don't lose to your competitors.
Exactly.
It's a tough world. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have sympathy. I do have sympathy for that. And it's not easy at all. It's not easy at all. Yeah. Okay. So that's so how do you view, say, the middle part of the sale? And I'll just preface this a little bit. Like, I see this as being overlooked a lot of the time. I see a lot of focus from companies, especially SaaS companies, getting maniacal about prospecting and putting stuff in the top of the funnel. And then usually when something's in the funnel, sales managers will focus on closing.
Yep.
Right. But there's a whole middle section of stuff there. I wonder if you have a view on progressing deals in the right way. And once we've identified an opportunity, what we do.
Yeah. I push my sales managers really hard to spend time with reps after the first real substantial call. Not the connect call where, like, maybe you're talking to someone for 5 or 10 minutes, but that first scheduled call, you probably set up a Zoom meeting like we're doing right now. It's probably at least a half hour, maybe longer, depending on what you're selling. It could be shorter too, but it's the first meeting where the prospect is showing up knowing that they're going to have a conversation. I think the sale happens there. And so I want my sales managers to really focus in on that conversation, because I think that's where you make or break the sale.
Sure.
After the demo and later on, there's some things a manager can do to help, but it's kind of like the cookie's half baked already. It's really hard to go back.
True.
So in that section, I think there are 2 or 3 really fundamental skills that the best salespeople have. The first is they're great at asking questions, learning about their prospect, and really teasing out what their problems are. I tend to think that they have no problem moving away from a prospect at that point if they just don't think that they can solve their problem. But that's the first skill. The second skill is then how do you take what you learn and propose some solutions? And what I've seen work best is when you propose solutions that your company can fix, but aren't really anything to do with your company.
Mm.
Right. And so it's like no matter whether you buy my product or not, these are the three things that you should do to fix your situation.
Sure. Yep.
And I think that changes the whole dynamic of the sales process. You're really focused on the customer. You're able to consult with them. You don't need to know everything about your competitors, but you need to know enough about your space to understand what you do well, what other people do well. You need to be comfortable to say, hey, we're just not the right company for you.
Yep.
And you have to have enough pipeline so that you can do that. So you're not holding on to every single person that you're talking to
Yep.
as if they have to buy from you. So those are the first two skills. And then the third skill is, I think you have to learn to talk like a CEO. CEOs talk about why the world is different and why their company is well positioned to help people with that change in the world. It's very simple. Like I don't know if you're familiar with like the Simon Sinek start with why.
Oh yeah.
Thing. I think everybody in sales is familiar with that one. And if they're not, they need to go watch the.
Makes a lot of sense. Yep. I like it.
Reps need to talk like that. Reps need to talk about the bigger reason behind everything. So right now at HubSpot, our big thing is that consumers are changing, right? The way people buy is changing. We used to say like the internet had changed everything, and the way your marketing was going was totally broken, and you had to figure out how to turn your website into your best salesperson.
Yeah.
But now we're talking about this, like these consumers are just so picky. They demand so much of you.
Yes.
How do you as a company set yourself up to handle all that? And it's kind of what we're talking about here with the salesperson, because the salesperson is one part of that. And they're definitely impacted by this change in the way people are buying.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So David, I want to ask you about the role of social here. And I know you're active on social. Is that something you encourage your salespeople to establish their own personal brand or their own like domain authority in their customers' world or the customer's business? How do you look at it?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I think it's hard for sales reps. Like it takes some effort. It's not something where, if you make 10 phone calls, you can see the results of that.
Yeah.
But I think that, the best sales reps get some lift in their sales success when a prospect that they're dealing with looks them up on LinkedIn and sees that they're talking about things that are important to the sales rep personally, but are also or additionally relevant to their world, right? So
Sure.
HubSpot's all about helping companies grow better, whether that's marketing, sales, or customer service. And so I think that the reps at HubSpot who are, curating content and posting that, or writing their own content or commenting on things, that goes a long way. That shows your prospect that you actually know something. And to me, it's binary. They don't have to actually agree with what you're saying. They just have to know that you're being active.
Yes.
If you're saying really dumb things, that will hurt you for sure, but you can't just do anything. Yeah. But if you seem competent and you seem reasonable, it's like, oh, this person is invested in this stuff.
Sure.
It's like a level of credibility.
So like how much time and effort do you think salespeople should be putting into this? Like, are you expecting them to be creating content, or what sort of things should they be posting? Or
it's hard to give a blanket statement with that one.
Yeah.
At HubSpot creates so much content.
Yeah, you guys got a lot of great stuff. Yeah, all these lists and
so many blog posts that I think reps can just largely pick and choose what HubSpot creates and put that out there. If I was at another company and my company wasn't creating content, what I would start with is I would sign up for 5 or 10
like free newsletters and things.
Yeah, newsletters. Yeah, or blog subscriptions. And I'd put 30 minutes on my calendar on Friday morning or sometime during the week, and I would go through and read all of those newsletters, right? And I would take out the 2 or 3 things that I think were top notch, and I would prepare 3 sentences about each one, or whatever my reaction to it was,
Yep.
or just, like you're curating a little bit of content, and then I would go and post that on LinkedIn over the next week, and doing a little bit of something. And
Sure.
if you looked at my LinkedIn profile, I'm not doing that exactly like that. But if I was at a company that didn't have a lot of great content and wasn't generating the hundreds of thousands of net new leads that we are at HubSpot, I would be doing a lot more. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's really good advice. Yeah. You don't have to be, it's great if you're if you're inclined to create content and write stuff and do your own videos, but that's going to be unusual. At least curate stuff that's of interest to your target customer. And just post an article a week or 2 articles a week with 2 or 3 lines. And like I've had quite a few sales teams that I've trained over the last year or so, getting tremendous results just by doing that. Like you say, 20 minutes, half an hour in a week on a Sunday night or a Monday morning, whatever, and just schedule those posts and getting access to C-level executives quite quickly, actually, by doing that. I've seen some fantastic results. So I think you're really
standing out. And I think you can rethink what it takes. Like, I've done a couple of videos over the last 6 months. I think one video that stands out is I think it got 50,000 views on LinkedIn.
Oh, nice. Yep.
It took me 1 full minute to record it.
Yep.
And it probably took me 1 full minute to post it.
Yes.
And that, it worked out great, but I literally just walked around the office, holding up my phone, just kind of doing that sort of thing with a woman in the office.
Yeah.
We were talking about, her career and the success she had moving from a BDR into a sales rep. And it went really well. And I just think there's salespeople have that ability. Like, they can do that. If they're out with a customer, account, they can record a 1-minute video about what's their favorite thing about their product. Post that like that. That shows some social proof, shows you care. You're smiling. There's not
absolutely, and it's very
it's
genuine.
helpful.
It's very authentic. Like we talked before, it doesn't have to be super polished or structured. You can make mistakes. People respond well to that. It's quite okay today. That I'm not surprised that such a sort of casual video would do very well. That's great. Okay, just changing gears before we wrap up, David. I did want to ask you about metrics for the sales team and how you look at that. Used to be, a huge focus on quantity of activity, number of calls, number of emails out. Things have evolved a bit, maybe towards outcomes and quality and so forth. So how do you look at, when you look at, inputs, activities, and then, outcomes and so forth?
Are you asking me to put on my sales guy hat as if I was a sales rep, or are you asking me from the sales director role?
No, as a sales leader, how should we be setting our teams up, and where should the emphasis be? And when we're thinking about our dashboards and, keeping on top of
Yeah. I'm very much driven by effort. However, I do value performance and results over everything else. So I think the first thing is, are people hitting their targets? At HubSpot, we set it up so you should be able to hit your target. Like, some sales orgs just don't do that. We believe that when people are hitting their targets and they're performing above and beyond, that there's people sell better.
Okay. Yeah, that's quite different than a lot of companies in your industry who really overlay their targets,
totally,
tremendously, right? That's
HubSpot does a really odd thing, and I think it's so smart, which is, in order for me to hit my number and the company hit their number, we actually need the reps to do about 108% of their quota.
So you're taking
most organizations, it's the opposite, right? It's like
70%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good way to run a sales org. But it does create a little tension for folks like myself. But
of course,
back to your original question.
Yeah.
I like to track the effortful things. You know what I mean? And for me, I think the most important metric is probably opportunities created. Most sales reps actually get pretty good really quickly. When I say really quickly, within their first year within a role, moving someone who is scheduled to talk to them down the sales process and getting a sale.
Mm.
And when they don't do well, it's typically that they don't have enough conversations. So that's to me is the most important one. Now, I don't believe that any one metric is something that you can just focus on, because your team will learn what you care about the most, and they can kind of game their activities.
Agree. Yes.
To just focus on one thing. And so if you have a rep who is, creating 20% more opportunities than everybody else, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be 20% better on the back end in terms of their quota if they're not focused on other things. So I think the conversion rates between each stage is really important. And I push my managers to look at those sorts of things to help identify where people or where the reps are maybe deficient in a couple of things. And then we use tools like Gong.
Yeah, because I actually was doing a training course last week teaching a bunch of managers about looking at metrics. And I'll put up a set of metrics and ask them to comment on it. Yes. And I got a lot of different feedback. But the answer was, you can't tell anything by looking at those surface metrics, right? You've got to dig into it. It gives you some clues. And like you say, like someone, you start focusing on opportunities. Someone just starts loading opportunities in the pipe, but they could be garbage, right?
Exactly.
Someone starts calling their parents and their sisters and their cousins to get their calls up. That doesn't really help us. So I don't want to see anyone doing 0 calls or having days with only 5 calls or something, right? But I'm not going to get mental about them not doing 50 calls a day.
I think about it backwards, right? So we set minimums for every stage, right?
Okay.
Like when you first come in, we say, hey, minimum number of phone calls per day is X. Minimum number of opportunities created is X. Minimum number of discovery calls is X. Minimum number of demos is X. Minimum number of deals sold is X. And then that should get you to your quota.
Yep.
And oh, by the way, if you want to be a President's Club rep, which we set at 125%, then you're going to have to either get way better at the conversion ratios or do more. But when it actually, you get 3, 6, 9, 12 months in, I actually go backwards. I'm like, okay, are you at your quota most months? Okay, great. How are your demos looking? Okay, you're there. Okay, so then how many discovery calls are you doing? Okay, and if there's a deficiency in there, it's like, okay, well, how are you going to fix that one metric? And oftentimes the answer is something that comes before it, right? It's like, if you're not setting enough opportunities, you're probably not making enough phone calls, or prospecting emails, or vidyards, or whatever. It's probably not the low number of opportunities is
I agree
of something else.
Sure. Yeah, it's like I often have sales leaders ask me to come in because they've got a close rate problem or a closing problem, right? But it's never a closing problem, I can tell you. It's usually something earlier. They haven't done proper discovery. They don't have enough pipe. There's not enough activity. It's usually, like you say, something earlier in the process. So totally relate to that. All right, David, any final thoughts on sales management, sales process in the 2019 before we finish up?
I don't think of anything else, but I'll just, if you're a sales manager, focusing on earlier stage deals, I think is the most important thing you can do to impact your reps' performance. Okay. Too often we get stuck at the deals that are right about to close and trying to figure out those last minute hurdles, which are super important. You still have to do that. But on a weekly basis, you should be focusing on the stuff at the beginning of the sales process, because that's where you can have the biggest impact. You can shape how the rest of those conversations are going to go.
It's a really great point. I like that a lot. Yeah, so get that right in the beginning, proper call plan, proper objective, and set things up right from the start. I think that's awesome. All right, David. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you again. And I think a lot of value for all the sales leaders and country managers, guys and girls in similar roles to you, will get a lot out of this. So I really appreciate your time today.
Love it, Steve. Thanks so much for having me again.
No worries. And thanks everyone for listening, and bye for now.